Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Today we're going to be talking about Knightfall. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent. And do you remember way back in March when I said, here's my quarantine reads? And I listed off a whole bunch of books that I haven't read, and I said I was going to read them during quarantine. Well, I'm kind of just now getting to some of them. I've read some, and you've seen those reviews on the channel as I was getting new books, but I haven't really cracked into that big, pile. It's not a pile, it's on the bookshelf. But I did say at least one thing I wanted to start reading right away was the Knightfall 25th Anniversary 9-volume trade paperback collection. So I have done a third of those, and I will be doing a review on each third. So every 3 volumes I'll be posting a video here and talking about those. And they all kind of go together except for maybe the last one, because it's 3 different stories, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So right now, let's talk about Knightfall. So this is available also as one big hardcover omnibus, and I think it contains pretty much the exact same things that are in these volumes. So if you're following along at home, I'm talking about the 2018 printings. Yeah, I think these are 2 years old. But the 25th Anniversary Edition Knightfall printings. Yes, 2018. Thank you very much, math. So Volume 1, or not really Volume 1, it says Prelude to Knightfall here. It's got the Joker on the front. And then you have Knightfall Volume 1, and then Knightfall Volume 2. So, talking about these 3 trades. And they're also available, if you have the older printing, and I think from 2015 or something like that. It wasn't that long before they reprinted these here. They were, not they all, but these 2 volumes were printed in a big omnibus, or not omnibus, but a thicker trade paperback. So it contained Knightfall Volume 1 and 2, as well as The Vengeance of Bane and the issue from the Prelude here that ends this thick book that, where Bane blows up Arkham Asylum. So a little bit thicker than these 2 volumes, but you can also read that too. I think it has it does have the same, it might have the same, I think it has this cover, but a different coloring. But the reason you can tell these are different is because these all have the 25th anniversary font labels right here, and they've all got the bat symbol, the changing bat symbol, which I'm going to do a video on later as well, which I think is pretty cool. So let's talk Prelude. I read this a number of months ago. I probably read this in April or May, and then put it down, and just now got back to Knightfall over the last week or so. But Prelude is pretty cool. I'd never read a lot of this before. It starts off with the Bane, or Vengeance of Bane one-shot, which is the first appearance of Bane. It's got this beautiful, is that Glenn Fabry cover here, written by Chuck Dixon, art by Graham Nolan, and inker Eduardo Barreto. So this is where we first meet Bane, who he is, Santa Prisca, all that stuff. But this volume does a lot better job, not really fleshing out who Bane is. I mean, that's all there in the first one-shot. Because Bane meets Batman in that one-shot and then gets mad and says, "I'm coming for you!" So it's kind of strange there. He says, he's going to get him and you're going to beg for my mercy. And then they kind of go their separate ways for the rest of the volume. Most of this volume has to deal with what Batman is going through at the time. So I remember reading Knightfall for the first time when I had the older trades that I highlighted in my other video a long time ago that I've replaced these with. And I was like, why is Batman so tired? Because he starts out Knightfall Part 1 already really, really tired and exhausted. And all that exhaustion starts here. So it's all in the Prelude, and I'm so happy that they start all that, because now it really does read like one complete story. You're not just joining Batman in the middle of something. You see when it started, and it started a long time ago. So he's already running himself ragged. You also get within these pages, there's an issue with Robin and Jean Paul Valley as Azrael. You get the Metalhead issue, and Azrael's kind of pseudo costume is kind of designed on this. I'm trying to find that cover. It's a beautiful cover, but Azrael's like wearing his suit next to Robin, but that suit's never actually worn in this series. It's kind of weird. But you get all this stuff in here where Batman's going up against different guys. There's like a little kid soldier from South America who takes over an army. This is what I'm talking about. Batman 488. Yeah, it's Robin and Azrael teaming up, except Azrael never wears his costume. He wears this weird black thing that Robin gives him. So this is kind of like the first time Jean Paul Valley shows up in the regular Batman comics. You know, Robin's learning about Azrael right here on the first page. And this is kind of where, you know, he kind of joins the Batman team, per se. So, and that's really like 6 issues before Knightfall begins. So it's really strange that this guy comes in 6 issues before the event. Here's Azrael's other costume. Looks like a ninja, basically, with the A on it. So, and then for him to take the mantle of the Bat much, much later on is just really, really weird. Another important event in this book is this battle with Killer Croc. In Knightfall Part 1, Killer Croc has already met Bane, and his arms are broken, and he's mad. All that happens in this issue right here. Now, if you're looking at this art and you're going, what is going on? This art looks terrible. Well, it's not terrible. It's Jim Aparo. And Jim Aparo is a legendary Batman artist. He just has a bunch of different inkers on him, and depending on which inker is inking Jim Aparo, you can get different levels, basically. So Jim Aparo's art is very classic, very basic. It's not David Finch or anybody. It's not Jim Lee, anybody modern. This is very much classic comic book style art, similar to the plaques on the wall. You know, clean line work, very simple, straightforward, storytelling's very strong, proportions are on, but it's not flashy in any way. It's very workmanlike. You also have pencilers in here like Graham Nolan, who is very good. I really like his style. I think the best. Tom Mandrake's in here, Michael Netzer, and Tom Grindenberg. So they're kind of all over the place. And this collects Batman, Vengeance of Bane, and issues of Detective Comics. It's all in the back there. But this volume is most important, I think, for the introduction of Jean Paul Valley and Azrael, although it doesn't have the Sword of Azrael miniseries. So you're just kind of like, here's a character. You can go buy that trade or, you know, read that story elsewhere. But the most important thing is the last issue right here where Arkham Asylum gets blown up. Why that's not Knightfall Part 1, I have no idea. But it is important because that's where Arkham Asylum's blown up, and then you have the events of Volume 1. So reading Volume 1, it made a lot more sense now after reading the Prelude why Batman was so tired and everything like that. What's not explained in this volume or this one is who Chandra Kinsolving is and why she is treating Tim Drake's dad for something, or what is wrong with Tim Drake's dad. All that, I guess, is left to Wikipedia. I need to go read that. But it's not that important right now. I'm sure when I get to Night Quest, The Search, it will be more important because that's the story of Bruce trying to go find him. But what's strange about this volume is that Bane is barely in it. Like, he's the bad guy. He's on the cover. He's the guy that takes Batman down and breaks his back like he does on this cover. But he only really appears in like the last, 2 issues or something like that. And even Bane's henchmen, while Bane and his henchmen are throughout all these issues for little snippets, you never forget that they're there. Batman doesn't face off with them until the last 2 issues of this volume. And this volume is the first 11 parts, yes, of Knightfall. So you're talking about 9 other issues where Batman is facing off against other enemies. These other enemies include the Riddler, Mr. Zaz, the Joker, Scarecrow. The Scarecrow tail in here was pretty good. Killer Croc again. This issue right here. Which issue is this? Batman 660, covered by Sam Keith here. This is Jim Balent on art, and he goes on to do the Catwoman miniseries. But this was my favorite, one of my favorite issues in this whole book, and his art stands out against the others, basically because he's the only guy other than Jim Aparo and Graham Nolan doing the art in this book, because it's just Batman issues and detective issues. But his art stood out to me. I can see why they gave him a Catwoman book right after Knightfall. Maybe this was his tryout or something like that. But it's really, really good. Batman, Robin, Bane, Robin, and Killer Croc are fighting in the sewers on like this beam up here. It's a really cool issue. That's a standout to me. So finally, Bane comes after Batman after he's basically almost nearly drowned in a tunnel thanks to Robin. Thanks to Scarecrow and Joker. And he sends his goons after him, Trog, Zombie, and who's the bird guy? Can't remember the bird guy. These three gentlemen right here. And these guys are here in the issues, but they're never really like laid out why they're so dangerous. And certainly they do push Batman around, but he does get like, I guess, the upper hand enough. He still outsmarts him. So all in all, these guys are not that dangerous to Batman. So I don't know why Bane is keeping them around other than they're doing his dirty work. But at the end of everything, that's when Bane comes in. I love this page from Graham Nolan. It is you, with my terrible South American accent. Leading into Batman 497, where his back is broken. Part 11 of Knightfall. But I love this page right here. But yeah, so it's kind of weird that like this master plan, this guy who thinks he can take on Batman, and he's always talking about how superior he is to Batman and how he's going to beat Batman, etc., doesn't actually do it himself. He lets other people wear him down to like the lowest possible level, and then he goes to fight Batman. Maybe because Batman kind of shamed him a little bit in the beginning in the Prelude in Vengeance of Bane. But it's very strange. It's like, why, if you think you're so strong and so smart, like, why wouldn't you face him at his best? Why face him at his worst? So that was kind of weird. So I can see why it's a great story. I really enjoy it. But as far as Bane as a villain, they build him up here to be a threat, but they never follow through because he just you're kicking somebody when they're down is basically all he's doing. So that is a little strange right there to me. So Knightfall Volume 2 is where we but Jean Paul Valley takes up the mantle of Batman, faces off against Bane a second time, and kicks his ass, basically. So maybe they did that to make Bane break Batman's back, have his plan, but meanwhile, the brand new guy, once he gets his armor on, goes and kicks Bane's ass, kind of tears down this idea that Bane is like this ultimate Batman villain, the strongest one there is, and all this other stuff that he's spouting out the entire time. So Knightfall goes all the way to Batman 500, and that is part 19 right here. So what's cool about Knightfall, and these collections in particular, is that they're highlighting how the bat symbol in the corner changes. So every issue of Knightfall, they said the name of the book and then Knightfall banner at the top all open up to a cover right here. This is not a good one. They kind of make the bat symbol get eclipsed and change different colors. So here's one right here if you can see it. There you go, number 16. So I'll do a video where I show all the different ones getting eclipsed, and then that carries on and through the rest of the series with Night Quest and Night's End and all that stuff, how that ends. But it's cool to open each cover and see like you're getting closer and closer to an all red bat symbol. And then when you get to Batman 500, you're at the new bat symbol, all red, right there. Very simplistic, stylized, very 90s bat symbol. So this is also kind of a weird book. I've read all this stuff before, but what was strange to me is how much time they spend with Bruce Wayne just kind of like laying in waste, you know. You start out and they get Bruce Wayne back to the Batcave and checking on him and make sure everything's okay for one issue. And then they say, well, now we need to wait, or we need some drugs and stuff. And then we cut to this 2-part Showcase 93 story that's basically a retelling of an adventure that happened earlier in Knightfall that didn't fit within the regular issues, or maybe they were late, I have no idea. But they put these as parts 13 and 14 of Knightfall, when you read them, and honestly, I skipped over a lot of it because it was like, this stuff's already happened, it doesn't matter. There's 1 or 2 pages in each of these Showcase 93 issues where they're just framing devices, and they're still waiting by Bruce Wayne's unconscious body because he's in a coma and stuff like that. And then they get some drugs, Bruce Wayne wakes up, and you know, then you have this weird 3-part storyline from these issues of Shadow of the Bat, 16, 17, and 18. And they have the Knightfall banner, but they don't have parts. And when you read it in this volume, it's really jarring because you're getting to... suddenly you get to the next part, part 16. Like, look how thick this is. All this is just... It's got the Knightfall banner, but it's not a part. So, in the issue right before this, Jean-Paul Valley gets the bat, you know, the bat cape, says, okay, you're going to fill in as Batman for now. Then he goes on a 3-issue adventure all on his own, which doesn't really fit in anywhere because he's already says he's Batman. And he already knows that he's like Batman. He's doing his own thing. He's more violent, more vicious. But I guess they stuck it in here because he doesn't have the new gloves, where you get to part 16, which is Detective 665. And I think it's towards the end of this issue. No. It's part 17 where he gets the new bat gauntlets. They're right there in the corner, in the spine there. So maybe they could have put him in here, but this has like a very clear delineation. He jumps with this mob boss off the roof here, and then you turn the next page, the next issue, and he's beating up that same mob boss right there. So I guess it didn't fit there, but it's a little strange because 665 starts with Dick, Tim, Robin. God, I can't keep these guys straight. There's so many Robins going, you know, he's a lot different as Batman, whereas like literally the issue before in the regular Batman books, he just got this ability to wear the cape and cowl, I guess. So anyway, it's made pretty clear once you get past the Scarecrow stuff, which is a good story. I recommend it. It's just weird where it fits in, and that they slot in 3 issues of the same book that has the Knightfall banner but is not one of the parts in the main storyline. It's kind of a side story. So you could totally skip it, but rereading of those 3 issues, I think they're pretty cool. So maybe read them if you want. It's up to you. Or come back to them at the end. But it's made pretty clear that, you know, Jean-Paul Valley as Batman is a more vicious thing. And Bruce immediately, like earlier in the volume, says, don't go after Bane. He's mine, or he's too powerful, he's too strong, he'll get you. And then Jean-Paul Valley's like, no, I'm Batman. I'm going to go after the bad guy. And things kind of fall apart from there. So the story ends, obviously, with Jean-Paul Valley getting a new gloves. And then finally, in Batman 500, getting a new bat suit. This page right here. So this is Mike Manley on art, and he takes over in the last half of Batman 500. What's cool, this is a really thick issue, Batman 500, is here's the Kelly Jones cover with Azbats in that costume beating up Bane, similar to this one. What's cool is you have Jim Aparo doing like the first half of the issue with Batman in his old suit, and then once Batman gets his new suit, they switch to Mike Manley as an artist, and then he takes over, and you get this beautiful like framing sequence of Jean-Paul Valley flying through Gotham, gliding on his new cape that he designed himself, hunting Bane. And then he finds Bane and beats the crap out of him, and then kind of hesitates when he's about to kill him, and then leaves. And then Robin's saying, okay, you've earned the right to be Batman. He goes, thanks, kid, and leaves. In the back, we've got some sketches and stuff like that. So what I realized in rereading all this is that Knightfall is not necessarily the fall of Bruce Wayne. It's really about the fall of the mantle of the Bat. And I think that's why the Eclipse takes 17 issues of the Bat signal to get fully eclipsed in that kind of red tinge. Or is it 18? Yeah, 18 issues to get this fully eclipsed red bat symbol, to where we've gone from the yellow bat symbol to this red one, to now Batman as a person, is not a bloody character, but just a darker Batman. So the Knightfall in the title is not necessarily about Bruce Wayne getting his back broken, although that is the main thing that happens throughout this 3 volumes. It's mostly Bruce up until the middle of this one. But it's really about how the idea of Batman is broken, and then it's kind of rebuilt and restarted towards the end here, with this new, more violent Batman. And then we will see that kind of descent into darkness, into madness in the Night Quest volumes. So all in all, I still think this is a good read. It is very old. It's 25, 27 years old right now, so call it 30. And because it came out in 93, 94, the coloring is still very basic. It's still like the 80s coloring or the early 90s coloring. For whatever reason, Image had broken away in the early 90s, I think around the same time, and they went with computer coloring. And you have beautiful painted covers in here from Brian Stelfreeze and stuff like that, where it looks more modern. And Brian Stelfreeze's art is very stylized. But the interiors with Graham Nolan is a little bit more of a modern style, but definitely the legacy art of Jim Aparo lends this to like a more classic feel of a Batman story, even though it's only 25 years old. But it makes it feel a little bit older than that. But I assure you, the writing and all that stuff is still modern. You can still read it if you're a modern Batman fan and have never read this before. I think it's important to read because it sets up who Bane is and why Bane is this, kind of terrified villain. He's not necessarily overused like the Joker is or Two-Face is, but he was a new villain at the time, and he was like one of the ones from that era that stuck. Knightfall Volume 1 has some stories with Amygdala and who's the other guy? Scarface and the Ventriloquist, and they're not really threatening. It is kind of cool to read Knightfall Volume 1 and 2 and see Scarface slowly come back to prominence with the Ventriloquist and all the different hand puppets he has. But it doesn't set up a real threat the way that Bane is for Batman. So I definitely recommend these trades, recommend this story. I really like the spine, how it sets up on your bookshelf as the eclipsing bat symbol. Really, really cool. As well as when you get all 9 volumes, you got 3 of these basically up there. So Knightfall, I think it's a good story. I think it holds up. I was a little worried that it wasn't going to hold up when I reread it, but I'm glad I reread it. Had a lot of fun. And the Prelude helps a lot. So definitely, I think you can definitely read 1 and 2, no problem, but I think you're going to get the most out of it if you read the Prelude, because that's really where you see the start of the descent of Bruce Wayne to get so tired, so exhausted, that you understand by the end of Knightfall Volume 1, in that tunnel, facing the Joker and Scarecrow, trying to save the mayor. He is literally on his last leg of strength. And then it's just all the more tragic to see him get the shit beat out of him by Bane in the very next issue. So I think that, that build right there is very important to the story. Whereas if you just read Volume 1 and 2, you might miss some of it. Although, don't be surprised when you read Prelude that there's not a whole lot of Bane once you get past that first issue with the Vengeance of Bane. So I told you. But, I mean, again, it's a thick story, and I already told you, too, also that, you don't see Bane in every issue. So take that with what you will, I guess. So thumbs up for me. I like this story. I'm glad I reread it. And, yeah, I'll see you guys next time here in the Funny Pages on BK's Bullets. Like, comment, share down below. See you guys.